Okay, so we are live. Hello, everybody. War Hampshire, I'm going to let you talk to people as they come in the chat as I uh, go back and I fix this stuff at the. I got to make the channel. It's posted up on the Telegram channel. We now have 6 people in here. Hello there, D. You are on time. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now I can type stuff. How's it going today, Ron?
It's going all right. How are you?
Beautiful day down here in San Diego. It's mid-70s.
It's it's same here. I threw the top down when I went to go tan. So I know. I don't want to hear it, okay? Yes, I tan. I'm vain. I like it. I don't like being pasty white. So
Well, I got a beach to take care of that.
yeah, I know. But see, the cool thing about tanning in a tanning bed is that you don't have any tan lines.
That's one thing that's never really kept me up late at night.
Yeah, I know.
Now that the weather's starting to get nice, I'll be in the pool just about 6 or 7
Hello
days
there,
a week.
Kikyo and Tiffany. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll be in the pool just about every day now that it's getting nice out, so that takes care of the tan. Don't need to do anything else besides that. Yep, DK, it was about 75 where I'm at. And it's going to be that way all week. Looks like 79 degrees on Thursday. I will be right back, Ron. I forgot my constitution. I forgot my pocket constitution.
No problemo.
I am back.
Hey there, Darren. Oh, I've got this big old bright. I finally got the lighting fixed on my computer, and which is great, but it's in my face. So people thought I was going to look red yesterday. I think that was my friend Tammy. I went to high school with her. Let's see here. So we've got 18 in the house right now watching. Doug called me. So hopefully, we're going to have his thing fixed today.
His green screen or whatever it's called.
Hello, Sassy. What's that? Yeah, his green screen.
Got a lot of news today.
Oh yes. So do tell. What do you see? And I've been doing some chores around the house, so I haven't been paying that close attention.
Well, the big one is Pfizer's announced earnings earlier, and I haven't seen what's how CVS, Coke, or what was the other one I was watching for today? Some other one. Anyways, but Pfizer put in a lot of new language in their. Usually, they have to give all their warnings, investor risk statements.
Mm-hmm.
They put in some really interesting new language, and you remember Pfizer had they basically had a patent cliff leaving from this year all the way through 2025. There's a bunch of really profitable drugs are falling off of patent protection. So Pfizer might be in a world of hurt. But
They're in a world of hurt already. They're gonna be
Yeah.
in a world of hurt when people find out they've been killing them.
Well, that's what I said. That's what I meant about you want to go in there and read that language. I texted it to you earlier. But it's something I've never read in a earnings report before.
I guess we should probably refrain from saying such things on this channel strictly because we don't want to jeopardize this platform.
Yeah, I think we can keep this all in the underneath YouTube's guidelines, unlike our other podcast.
Nah. By the way, I purchased the domain glitchinthematrix.tv.
Nice.
Whereabouts are you, Better Human? Because we are also in SoCal.
If it's 80 degrees, it's got to be somewhere east of me.
Mm-hmm. Could be out near me because I am okay. The OC, North or South County, inland, on the coast. What? You don't have to give your exact location. But I've lived in Orange County I've lived several places in Orange County. Okay. Yeah, it's a little warmer there. A little warmer there than on the ocean. I see that Anaheim is struggling because Disneyland has lost so much market share. Anaheim is like in dire straits because they don't have the money coming in from the tourists or the conventions. There's a guy who posts. I can't remember his name. It's James something or other. You were the one that was telling me about him, Warhamster. He does the daily, or he does like the Cal report. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? Warhamster, are you there? Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I had myself muted. Yeah, that's James Wallace.
Yeah, James Wallace. Thank you.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I met him through Sarah Stevens, who was one of our gubernatorial candidates when we were talking about doing canvassing. So I stayed in touch for the last few months. He's a nice guy. He does some good reporting too, just little quick 5-10 minute quick hits.
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of his channel? Do you have it offhand? Give him a plug here.
I will actually. Let me find it. His channel is James Wallace. In fact, let me.
That's really creative.
Yeah. Let me share this, and then I will copy the link and put it in the chat.
And my buddy Bill Rice launched his prepping site.
Hello, Chris. He did?
Yeah, you want me to get the link? I don't know if I can find it in time. I'll track it down later. Hey, Chris. Yeah, let me track that down for him. Hang on.
Okay, so for you guys in California, here is I'm going to post a link into the into the chat, and that's to James Wallace, and he does he basically goes all over the state of California, and he talks about significant um, things that are going on within the state of California. It's very. I find his updates very informative.
Yeah, and they're short and quick to the point too.
Yes, he doesn't embellish. He just gets right in there and does it.
Yeah, but it does deep homework too, so that's why I kind of like it. I mean, it's like you learn something you didn't know about California every time.
Mm-hmm. And he's not. It's not. What was that dude's Hauser was the guy who used to go around California and do all the talk about all the stuff that was all the places in California. It was Hauser or somewhere. There is.
You got me.
Hugh Hauser. Okay.
I never paid attention to California politics till these last couple of years.
Huell Hauser, Huell. He's passed on, but he did a really good show. He would go on and he would go all over California, and he would just and talk about California stuff, just show off really cool things in California. He died in 2013. So Huell Hauser was an American television personality, actor, producer, writer, best known for producing and writing California's Gold, his human interest show, visiting with Huell Hauser. So it was on KCET, but he literally went everywhere and just pointed out really cool things about California.
They're a little bit worried in San Diego about the.
Did he?
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Let me log out and log back in, close and reopen, because I don't know why I suddenly vanished, but we'll try again.
Technical difficulties in the Constitution
Seemed
class.
to be my life, yeah.
And here I thought we were going to start on time for once.
I know. Leave it to Doug.
Yeah, I was saying the San Diego Convention Center is just taking a beating. I don't know. San Diego is going to be in a lot of trouble when all this stuff shakes out, because that's pretty much tourist driven as well. I mean, we still got our zone. We still got the zonies in the summer, but it was definitely beach traffic is way down from previous years.
Hold on. What's going on?
It's frozen. I'm not moving.
All right. Are you? Did you get your screen thing fixed?
Yeah, you can. You see, it says Mr. Constitutional, all right?
Nope. I don't see anything. No? It's just a black screen for me. It's just black.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
See, I see it. Why is it not?
Go in. Hello, Monica. Whereabouts in Central PA? So I put the poll in the chat again for everybody. So just please go in there, and if you've been here before, just say you're not new here. If you are new here, okay, Harrisburg, very nice. If you are new, please hit yes so that we can get an idea of what how many new people we have today.
We're up to 6 votes, and all of them are no's.
Well, I kind of figured. We need to get some more press, some more gloss. We got 49 watching. Last week was a pretty good day, a pretty good week. I think we had like about 100. We had close to 100 watching. Resend the link, Ron. Okay, he's back. I put him in there.
He's muted.
Can't unmute the guest. The mic isn't connected. There he goes.
All right. No, I'm unmuted now, but you can't see me?
Nope.
Nope.
It's showing me that I'm there, but it's frozen. It won't move.
Okay, so why don't you go in, Doug, and
damn it! Now my mic has gone weird.
No, you're checked. Okay, so let's do this. Go in and uncheck the uncheck the background of the green screen, and we'll just roll with it.
Well, the problem is now my mic's not working properly either.
You sound fine to us.
You sound fine to us, yeah.
We're gonna have to get Doug a full-time assistant.
Seriously. I'm gonna actually have to go down there and do this, or when he comes up on Thursday, he's gonna need to bring his computer, and we're gonna have to fix this because this can't go on. This is the last time this is gonna happen.
I agree. So the Disney earnings call I'm pulling up right now while we're waiting.
Sorry, guys, we're having some technical difficulties. Doug is here. We're just waiting on him to get it sorted out. Meanwhile, I just wanted to, while we're waiting on Doug, Warhamster and I, along with Dan Radio Style and Alpha Warrior, every Monday evening we do a live. We did it last week. We did it after the show, but typically we do that every Monday. So we can invite you guys to come in and join us. We have a lot of fun. We're serious about topics, but we also like to have a little bit of fun with the topics. Doug, let's just go, and even if you're black, just do it. We'll just hear your voice. It'll be like there you are. Okay.
Yeah, for some reason it's not working with the background, so I hit none now and it works.
Okay, good. All right.
So let me drop the green screen and we'll go from there.
No, we'll just just leave it there. Let's leave it. We'll just go. We're late. It's 3:07, so let's get her started.
Yeah, and my earphones ain't working now. I swear. Get one thing working, something else stops working. No, it drives me nuts, man. I do everything I can to fix this, and then that stops working. Well, so you guys are on the. So I'm gonna have trouble hearing you because I don't have my earpiece in because that's not working for whatever strange reason.
We're gonna get you a new set of headphones, okay? Can you hear me?
It's not the headphones. It's for some reason it just ain't connecting. It was connecting earlier, and then just suddenly it decided not to.
Okay.
Just like the.
It's okay. It's all right. We're here. We'll just let you talk. But I have a question for you.
Hang on a second. Breathe.
Breathe. Breathe. Woo-saw. Woo-saw. Woo-saw.
Take a hit of Dr. Pepper.
I need Dr. Pepper. Hang on a second.
There you go. Called that one.
There we go. Now everything in the world is good. I had some Dr. Pepper.
There you go. Okay, so before we jump in here, I want to pose a question to you. Last night on our recording of Glitch in the Matrix, I talked about the topic of gun like laws came up in California, specifically with San Jose. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I kind of took the position that that the states have the rights to make gun laws. That it's not the federal government. That the Constitution only governs the federal government. It does not govern the states in terms of.
Well, unless it specifically tells the states it can't do something.
Okay, so anyway, this gentleman brought this up to me, and let me read it to you so that I'm not getting it wrong. He says, Ron, according to Article 5, Clause 2 of the Constitution, better known as the Supremacy Clause, the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws, if any state to the contrary notwithstanding. This means that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Now, what he was talking about here,
At the very beginning, you said Article 5. Is that what it says?
that's what he's telling me.
Yeah, he's in error. It's Article 6, Clause 2.
Okay, so that he made, but whatever. But so answer that question for me: is if does this apply to something like the Second Amendment?
So this is what Article 6 is saying is if the federal government is given an authority, in other words, the law is made pursuant to the Constitution. If you go to Article 6, if any of those of you who want to follow us there, Article 6, Clause 2 says there's 3 things that are listed as being the supreme law of the land. This Constitution, the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made. Now, then it says that the states cannot make any laws contrary. Okay, so are they making a law contrary to the Constitution, or by making a gun law that we believe to be not good? No, because the Second Amendment applies to the federal government. If the Second Amendment also applied to the states, the word shall not be infringed would apply, and that would mean that there would be no gun laws of any kind whatsoever at the state level or the federal level allowed. Well, personally, I like the fact that my granddaughter can't go buy a gun, and that law has to be in place by somebody. The states are allowed to make gun laws. They are not making any gun law made by a state is not contrary to the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment applies to the federal government. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that the states have the authority to stomp all over your gun rights per se. It's still your right, but that's where the state constitution comes from. Mm-hmm. And so we need language in our state constitution to guide our legislature. The problem in California is there is no gun rights language in the state constitution. It's the only state constitution that has no gun rights language, by the way.
Then that was what I pointed out last night.
Yep, I think Ron.
But yeah, I understand the contrary argument, but they're assuming that. See, the problem is the whole problem comes from this idea of incorporating the Bill of Rights to the states. And that is something that is in place because of the 14th Amendment, or at least its interpretation. Because in the 14th Amendment, it says that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property, your rights, without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So it's telling the states you got to treat everybody equally, is basically what it's saying. But then in Section 5 of that same amendment, it says, Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. The argument is, since that Section 1 part applies to our rights, and Section 5 says the federal government or the Congress is there to enforce it, that means that the Bill of Rights applies to the states, and it's up to the federal government to enforce the Bill of Rights against the states. That's the theory. I don't accept that theory. I don't believe that's an accurate understanding of what they intended, or an accurate interpretation. If that was the case, then once again, because of the language in the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed, that would mean there could be no gun laws whatsoever, state level or federal level, first of all. And I don't accept that, because you got to remember, when the Founding Fathers went into this convention and when they did the Bill of Rights, they weren't worried about themselves. They were worried about this federal government. So they didn't make the Constitution something that also controlled the states. The only thing that applies to states is the state specifically mentioned, and that typically is if something's being prohibited in the states, such as Article 1, Section 10.
Well, Doug, you would have been proud of Ron. He made a very principled constitutional argument last night. I agreed with him, and it's a really important topic, because we're going to be coming back to this with these Roe versus Wade Supreme Court hearings coming up in the spring. So this is going to be front page news again. So I highly encourage everybody to read up on this.
Yeah, so now that I'm going to sit here with a green screen that's drooping a little bit behind me, but no image, let's get to work.
Let's do it.
Man, I'll tell you,
it's all right, Doug.
Someone in the chat room says Doug's not having a good day. Man,
just have some more Dr. Pepper, and all will be good. You know what? Here, I tell you what, Doug. You know what? Just because I want to be in solidarity with you, I'm going to break out the Jim Beam, and I'm going to have a swig just for you.
Now, it only works if you mix it with a little Dr. Pepper, right? My joke has always been that if I didn't have bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck. And so I have to be good because I got to make up for all the bad luck. But anyway, so, I always hit the red lights and always get stuck in traffic unless my wife's in the car with me. And then suddenly all the lights turn green. It's like the party in the Red Sea for us. But anyway, all right. So where we left off, Article 1, Section 8, and we've been slowly moving through Article 1, Section 8, which is typical in my classes. So that's fine because there's a lot to talk about in Article 1, Section 8. And where we left off, if I remember properly, and if I look at my marks properly, to establish post offices and post roads.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to bring up something that I thought was funny. Remember we had that discussion on whether or not the word "and" before uniform was a typo. Well, not a typo, but just a mistake, or if they were. Well, I came across another document, the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1790, because I was studying it for a whole different thing. And I've read it before. It does the same thing. It puts the word "and" in front of uniform. So they're convinced that at the time that you had to put "and" in front of a vowel. But once again, grammatically, it's supposed to be in front of a vowel sound, not necessarily in front of a vowel. In this case, uniform makes a consonant sound at the beginning, should be A. But that was their practice. They were putting the word "and" before vowels, regardless of the sound, so be it. All right. And the chat room's upset with you, Ron, because it should be Jack Daniels.
I know. I'm not a Jack Daniels guy. I'm a Jim Beam guy. Sorry, Darren.
Yeah.
Sorry,
see, when I get my bourbon and Coke, they say, "What kind of bourbon do you like?" Is I don't care as long as it's bourbon. That's all I care about. All right. You guys are funny. All right. So Congress shall have the power to establish post offices and post roads. What does the word "establish" mean, guys?
To create.
To create, establish. Does it say anything in there about maintaining post offices?
No.
That's an interesting thing. So, and this is shocking when I talk about this. To establish post offices and post roads, to create, but once they're created, it's up to the states to take care of them. There should not be a federal postal service. The federal government, according to this, does not have the authority to maintain the post office. Just create it. Once it's created, they hand it off to states. All right, state, we got it going for you. Here you go. Run it. Each state. Well, Doug, it's an interstate thing. Doesn't the Commerce Clause? No. Remember, the Commerce Clause has been misrepresented here. The state is supposed to run the post office. We're not supposed to have a federal postal service. We're supposed to have a California Postal Service, a Virginia Postal Service, a Massachusetts Postal Service. The federal government is to choose where these post offices are going to be and where the postal routes are going to be because they, understand the wider picture. But once they're created, the founding fathers wanted the federal government involved in the states as little as possible. So once it's created, get out of our state. Thanks for creating the post office. Now it's none of your business. We'll handle it from here. And that's a shock to people when I talk about it. But the word "establish."
You've told me.
Go ahead.
You have said on multiple occasions that the federal government is not supposed to own land or property unless they're going to do something with it, i.e. a military installation,
right?
A post office, a federal building where you conduct federal business like Social Security Administration, whatnot. And so like all of the BLM land basically in the western half of the United States is all illegal.
Oh, absolutely. Remember the Bundy Ranch situation. Bundy was right. Bundy was correct. As a matter of fact, I got a chance to meet Lavoy Finicum's wife. Lavoy Finicum was there with Mr. Bundy, and if you remember, got assassinated up there on the snowy roads of Oregon by the FBI. I really do believe Lavoy Finicum was assassinated, executed. Actually, is probably a better word, but Bundy was correct. And this is something that we'll get to later on in Article 1, Section 8, but just to whet your appetite before we get there, either today or next week, it says in the Constitution that there are 3 factors required when it comes to the federal government owning property, aside from it being spoils of war, but in other words, by treaty. And that is, it must be purchased with the consent of the state legislature for the purpose of needful buildings. Those are the 3 criteria. And so the first question is, when it comes to all these lands west of the Mississippi in the West, were those lands, or even national parks is another great example, were those lands purchased with the consent of the state legislature for the purpose of needful buildings? Well, needful buildings usually is not the case. It's usually just land, number one. Number two, in most of the cases of this land in the West, it was a condition of statehood. In other words, hey, Nevada, you can become a state. However, we're going to hang on to all this land, and we will not let you become a state unless you agree to it. Well, that's very unconstitutional. There wasn't a state legislature yet to agree to it, and there was no purchase price. It was basically blackmail. You want to become a state? Yeah, no problem. But you got to agree to our deal first of leaving us all this land. And it's not within the constitutional bounds. And so once again, Bundy was right. But we'll get to more details of that later on. So established post offices and post roads. This is the only place in the Constitution that roads are mentioned. The only authority over any roads that the federal government has is to establish post roads, not maintain them, not pay for the infrastructure and all that around them, the bridges. No, to establish post roads, period. Otherwise, all roads, all highways, all byways, all of that is the authority and the responsibility of the states. Remember, it's up to the states to handle their internal order and their internal prosperity, according to Federalist Paper number 45 by Mr. James Madison. And the reason why this is important is also we have to ask ourselves, well, is there any other evidence other than what the Constitution says about post roads? Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite pieces of evidence out there, and most people tell me I should lead with this on most stuff, is in 1817, James Madison is president. And in 1817, when James Madison is president, Congress proposes a bill for roadways and boatways, for the federal government to pay for that infrastructure, to pay for all the roads and boatways in the country. And Madison vetoes that bill on the grounds that it's unconstitutional, that there is no authority for the federal government to be paying for roadways and boatways. Now, in their argument, Congress includes, oh, well, it's authorized because of the general welfare clauses for the general welfare of the nation and because the military are going to use those roads. The same argument, by the way, Congress used with the Interstate Act that Eisenhower wound up signing. And Madison said no, and he explains in his veto, because according to the Constitution, whenever a president vetoes a bill, he's supposed to give a written explanation. And you can read that 1817 veto of the bonus bill. That's the name of the bill, bonus bill. I also call it a public works bill. By Madison, 1817, and he explains this. First of all, what you're saying about the general welfare is not what we intended. If Congress can make law based on the general attitude of general welfare, then there are no limits on the federal Congress. Therefore, why even have a constitution? That was Madison's response. Number two, just because military vehicles are going to be using the roadways does not make it a federal authority. So he's very explicit, very explains it in this veto. How we've got it so wrong with so much information that tells us the truth, I don't know. Other than the fact that there's an agenda and they don't care. But
what was the thing? What was the legislation that was passed under Obama when they talked about all the waterways and like if you had a even if you had like a little creek in your backyard, it was like that was governed by the waterways legislation, and it's like now that's essentially owned by the federal government.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be. That's up to each state. Federal government has no authority over that. Show me where it talks about waterways in the Constitution.
It doesn't.
There you go. Because the Constitution, enumerated is such an important word. If the authority is not expressly enumerated, it's not an authority. Yeah, but Doug, those rivers cross state lines. Once again, Commerce Clause is also misrepresented here. Just because something cross state lines doesn't mean it's automatically a federal authority. The Commerce Clause simply means that if commerce is not flowing across state lines properly, it's not in good order, then the federal government can act as a mediator. Otherwise, it's none of their business. And the fact that we have the federal government intruding at every opportunity drives me bananas.
More instances of the federal government just getting their tentacles and it's almost like a fish hook. They get their fish hook into their and then they just won't let it go.
Exactly. So we have this situation. Well, the thing is, you got to remember from day one, and this is where Warhamster can kind of tie into this. From day one, the people who believed in a strong central power, a ruling elite, tried to get their hooks into this system. They didn't like the fact that we believed that individualism should be at play here, and that the government should be limited, and that the federal government should only handle external stuff, and the state's business is up to the states. They didn't like that because, see, that creates, liberty and prosperity and a middle class and a class of people who believe they can make decisions for themselves. And that just doesn't ride well when it comes to a ruling class.
You talk about small government, Doug, and I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but I've been doing a lot of research on pre-Civil War. And I didn't realize that in the 60 or the 70 years before the Civil War began, that only 4 Northern presidents were ever elected to office, and not one of them ever served more than one term.
Most of them are from Virginia.
The bulk of the presidents that came and served as presidents were Jeffersonian in ideals.
Jeffersonian in ideals, and from Virginia mostly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Well, and it's funny because remember the Federalist Party only had one president, Adams.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't win an election after Adams because the big government idea didn't sit well with the people. And by the 1820s, the Federalist Party just got to the point where they couldn't win any election, much less presidency, and they were gone. Mm-hmm. And there was no other party. So the Jeffersonian Republicans, and what's funny is that era is called the feel-good era. Mm-hmm. They were doing really well with the just Jeffersonian Republicans running everything. And it was a one-party system for a while, but because it was these Jeffersonian-minded guys, things were going really well, and they even call it, once again, you can look it up, the feel-good era.
Mm-hmm. And as hard as they tried, the government always seemed to get smaller and smaller until Hamilton 2.0. I mean Lincoln.
Well, actually, the process really began with Andrew Jackson, but Lincoln is where it really kind of blew up. But Andrew Jackson believed in pure democracy, and he believed in a strong executive. So while it wasn't a giant balloon of big government, it definitely started pushing us in that direction. Well, but it wasn't really until Lincoln that federal supremacy really became a reality in the way that John Marshall had been desiring during his 36 years as Chief Justice.
Exactly.
I think it's an interesting coincidence that the strongest central governments we ever had was during the Federalist under Adams, and they had to, they came up with those tyrannical secession
Alien and Sedition Act.
Yeah, that's just awful. Then the next one we had was Lincoln, who basically just wiped out the entire Constitution if you were politically opposed to him. And we're living through it. We're living through a third version of that right now, where your Department of Homeland Security has now said if you disagree with the government, you're a terrorist. So, I'm not long for the living.
The two preeminent men from the South that had probably the biggest influence on the federal government, at least on limited government, would be, in my opinion, would be Thomas Jefferson and John C. Calhoun.
What was the last one?
John C. Calhoun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Calhoun is an interesting story in his own right, although he was never president. He was VP.
He was VP under Jackson, and he resigned because of his feud with him over the tariff of abomination.
Well, that was a part of it, and part of it was also the fact that Jackson was pushing pure democracy, and the Whigs formed because in his push for pure democracy, Andrew Jackson was also pushing for a stronger executive, that the executive should be the strongest branch. And the Whigs believe that the legislative should be the strongest branch, as it should be. And so that's where that separation happened. And the Whigs were largely the Jeffersonian Republicans from what became the Democratic Republican Party and ultimately the Democratic Party. But then the Whigs had their own battle with slavery. You had your pro-slavery, anti-slavery, pro-abolition forces inside the Whig Party. And so eventually the pro-slavery Whig Party members left the Whig Party, and they either went back to the Democrat Party or they became members of other minor parties until eventually the Republican Party was the Whig Party was only those who were abolitionists, but the Whig Party didn't have enough numbers, and they tried to do some reorganization, and then finally, out of those Whigs that were pro-abolition, the Republican Party emerged in 1854. Here's another interesting stat. You'll hear people in history talk about how bad slavery was or whatever. No Republican politician ever owned slaves. They were the anti-slavery party. That's what they were about. Now, that said, it doesn't mean that all of them believed in abolition. When you get to Lincoln, he didn't argue to abolish slavery. He argued to contain it. But we'll get to that when we get to Amendments 13, 14, and 15. Let's continue here. So established post offices and post roads. Roadways are supposed to be taken care of by the state. Someone says, well, Doug, what if the state's not taking care of its roadways, and you can't get goods in because it's all messed up? And I said, well, then people start complaining and they'll fix the roads, won't they? Just because the federal government doesn't do something doesn't mean it won't happen. All right. The next one. Congress shall have the power to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. That's the Copyright Office and the Patent Office. To protect what is American ideas.
Tell that to Clinton.
I'm sorry?
Tell that to Bill Clinton.
No. Yes, true. So the Copyright Office, Patent Office are very constitutional. They are supposed to be run by the federal government.
And let me say this just because it needs to be said, and George H.W. Bush, because they were doing things in unison. They were working in tandem with each other.
It's funny because when Reagan chose in his second term Bush as his running mate, the argument was, at the time, the argument they used, doesn't mean it's true, but the argument they used was, well, we wanted to make sure we got the less conservative northeastern states, and Bush as a Republican is more popular in northeastern states than Reagan, and that'll help bring in those less conservative, votes that are Republican. I don't believe that.
The first term or the second term?
I think they knew that Reagan was going to win no matter what, but I think he was pressured in making sure that he had a globalist in his.
I agree.
Yeah, which brings up that awful quote from Reagan when we look back on it. He said, "Yeah, my vice president was probably more involved in foreign affairs than any other vice president in history. Thanks for nothing." It's a lot of our China problems started right around then.
Indeed. Yeah. That's why when you talked about the Patent Office, because one of the things they did when they gave China most favored nation status is they just essentially opened up the patent office to the Chinese, and whenever they would come in and
Yeah.
I think they made it a rule. China made it a rule, or they imposed a rule on the United States that whenever they started manufacturing stuff for us, that they had to have access to everything. So and Clinton was happily obliged. Of course, that happened under Clinton's watch, but Clinton and Bush were like I said, they were thick as thieves, and they were tight as well, they were very tight. We'll just leave it at that. Moving
All
on.
right. Moving on. I don't know what else to say. Everything's been said. Congress shall have power to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is created by the Constitution. All the inferior courts are created by Congress. The district court, the circuit courts, the circuit court, and the district courts. The actual makeup, in other words, the style in which that is all set up, that was up to Congress. Now, question for you, gentlemen, and of course, you're going to answer for the comment section here, the chat room. If you can create something, what else can you do to it?
You can make it bigger. You can tear it down. You can fund it. You can starve it to death. You can.
Well, dismantle is what I was working for, but he was throwing as many darts at the dartboard as he could.
Oh, well. You could. I think I said it. Didn't I say you could end it?
But you're right. You can fund it. You can add to it. You can subtract from it. You can dismantle it. You have, because you're the creator of it. So Congress. So when, for example, when the Ninth Circus was more of a circus than it is today, if Congress didn't like what was going on, they could have dismantled it. They could have absorbed it into, say, the Eighth Circuit or the 10th Circuit, or split it up, or impeached all the judges and started over. I mean, they could have done any of that. Yeah, but unfortunately, we don't have a Congress that necessarily knows all of its duties, its responsibilities, or its abilities.
But we also don't have a people we have a people that are similar, which is especially why I tell everybody that they need to come and listen to the class.
Right.
And the more people that and if I've heard this once, I've heard it 100 times. When people find out how far away we are from the Constitution, they get mad. I mean, we've said that multiple times, and it's the truth.
Well, and matter of fact, last night was my first class in Chino. A new Chino class started. They're off of Fairfield at the Archibalds in Chino Hills. Like 20 people were there, and I told them before the class even started, understand something. When I go through the Constitution with you, two things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to get angry because you're going to realize we're not only no longer in Kansas, you're not even on the Yellow Brick Road anymore. We're on some dirt road on the far side of Oz at this point. Mm-hmm. Number two, I'm going to say stuff that's not going to make sense to you. You're not going to understand. The Second Amendment deal that we were talking about earlier is a big one, because we've been convinced of stuff that's not necessarily true. We think that the Bill of Rights is supposed to be applied to the states. We think that the Commerce Clause means anything across the state lines. We believe that birthright citizenship is somewhere in the Constitution. Judicial review is in the Constitution. Separation of church and state is in the Constitution. None of it is. And when I start talking about this stuff, it upsets the apple cart in our brains.
Uh-oh.
And it makes a mess.
I think you froze for a second.
Oh, really? Well, because I turned off everything but this one window that has this one thing. So I don't know.
It's okay.
But anyway, it upsets the apple cart, makes a mess, and we don't understand. But give me a full chance to fully explain so that you understand the dynamics that the Founding Fathers meant. Then it all comes together and it starts to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's continue.
So a question in chat, if you want to address that real quick, from D-Dog. You see that, Doug?
Because of Article 1, Section 2 and 9 makes the 16th Amendment a direct violation of the 13th Amendment. Huh. Well, the 16th Amendment is in direct violation of Article 1, Section 2 and Article 1, Section 9 in the sense of direct taxes. But I get what you're trying to say is a direct violation of the 13th Amendment because it enslaves us financially. But unfortunately, the legal minds aren't going to agree with you. But I get what you're saying. I think you might have something there. in a not so direct way. But yeah, that's good. Article 1, Section 2 and Article 1, Section 9, by the way, establish that there should be no direct taxation against the people, that the taxation is based on a taxation on the states. It's indirect on us. The states pay the income tax, and then we pay the states. And that gives the states the ability then to go over the budget to determine whether or not it's even worth paying. And line item veto a lot of it and say, hey, we're not going to pay this budget until you get rid of those lines that we marked off. I mean, that's a lot of what was happening before the 16th Amendment. 17th Amendment, repealing it, is at the top of my my constitutional wish list. But 16th Amendment and Federal Reserve are a tight second place, right behind the 17th Amendment.
They all go; those three go together. That's all the 1913. I just wiped 1913.
Well, they all came together for a reason. They're together for a reason because they all complement each other.
Yeah, I mean, we just take pretty much everything that happened that year, wipe it off the books, and the country just improved 50%. Yeah,
exactly. And then get rid of Reynolds v. Sims in 1964, and you complete the damage of and getting us back in the right direction. You completely get rid of most of the worst damage anyway. All right. Congress should have the power to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. Our Navy is primarily placed to protect our trade routes. And the piracies and felonies on the seas, which they were referring to here, were being committed back then by the Barbary pirates, the Muslim sailors of the time. And so I remember, what was it? Oh gosh, man, it was like 15 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. There was this situation where we had Navy ships where I can't remember if it was the Suez Canal or another region in that area, where we were arresting Ethiopian pirates because they were attacking different cargo ships. And a lot of people ask me if that was constitutional. Absolutely. Because protecting our trade routes is a part of the federal government's job, and it says so directly right there. Now, we could define what a piracy is and then punish countries committing it, or boats or vessels that are not a part of a country. And regarding those sins or those crimes that are committed on the high seas, that is what our Navy is really for. That's the reason why when we get to the Army-Navy thing here, you'll notice that the Army is given a 2-year window when it comes to being refunded or funded again. There is no limit there. It's always funded. It is.
The National Defense Authorization Act.
I'm sorry?
The National Defense Authorization Act.
Yeah, that's where the Army gets funded every 2. The Navy doesn't have to be funded.
It's funded. It's funded in perpetuity.
So my question, going back about a minute, is let's say we still had the 16th Amendment and the 17th Amendment. We got rid of the 17th. The states still controlled the budgetary. Do you think Congress would be able to get away with going 11 years without actually having a budget?
No.
Which is what we haven't actually had a budget in a decade plus now.
Yeah, no, that would be happening. Yeah,
I just wonder what the stuff. Yeah, what would the how does a state enforce it? How do they make Congress pass the budget?
First of all, they didn't allow unconstitutional spending. Do you think if there was no unconstitutional spending, we'd have a problem meeting our budget?
No, it should be balanced.
Well, yeah, there'd be more than enough money. The problem isn't revenue. The problem is the expenditures, and the expenditures are unconstitutional. This goes back to my friend Loki and I going through the entire budget back in 2007 and determining that 85% of the federal spending part of the budget was unconstitutional. If you get rid of 85% of your expenditures, do you think you can afford the rest? Probably. In fact, guess what? We could get rid of the direct tax. We wouldn't need it anymore.
Well, this may or may not be the proper venue for this, but my humble opinion is that if we want to starve the system, everybody just stops paying income tax.
Yeah, but they got a printing press. At this point in time, they only tax us for punitive reasons. They don't need the money. They can just summon it out of thin air.
And Alan would argue with you about saying from thin air, but I know what you mean.
With a ledger entry. Excuse me, Alan. I hope you're not listening. With a journal entry.
But the thing is, not only is our problem the fact that they're spending unconstitutionally, but they're also paying interest that they shouldn't need to be paid.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we're borrowing the money. Congress was originally given the job to create the funds, not borrow it. And they had the power to regulate the value of the currency by connecting us to the European banks and put us into this money is created when we borrow baloney. It creates this interest that's the reason why they created the direct taxes. They had to figure out a way to pay the interest. And Jefferson said, if you directly tax the people, there'll be no limit to how much you can tax them.
Jefferson was a pretty smart guy.
Yeah, the more I get to know him, the more I like him. It gets back to your Jeffersonian thinking presidents there for so many years, and really legislatures too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thomas Jefferson was probably aside from maybe Ben Franklin, was probably the biggest big brain of the time, man. I tell you, the guy was just, and there are stories, of course, I wasn't there, so I can't confirm it, but there are stories that he could speak to you in English, write in Greek with his left hand, and write in Latin with his right hand, all simultaneously. I believe it, man. I can't confirm it. I can't confirm it, but man, everything I know about the guy, I believe it. All right, let's continue, because this next one can be controversial for some people, and I want to make sure it's understood.
Okay.
Congress should have the power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, make rules concerning the captures on land and water. So declare war. There are two war powers that the founding fathers recognized in their writings: the power to declare war and the power to wage war. In the Articles of Confederation, if you read them, it recognizes both powers, but it granted them both to the Continental Congress. In the Constitution, it only grants the power to declare war to the Congress. Then it says that the president is the quote-unquote commander-in-chief of the military forces. In other words, the president has the authority to wage war. Now, here's the question. Can the president wage war without a declaration or without permission from Congress? A lot of people will argue that the Act of 1871 entered the chat room. We'll talk about it another time, Devil Dog. When it comes to the war, the declaration of war, that when it came to, what was it, Iraq, people say, well, that was an illegal war because it wasn't declared. We haven't had declared war since World War II, so all those wars are illegal because we're not supposed to be in war unless Congress declares it. No, that's not necessarily so. The president can wage war without a declaration as long as the Congress is funding it, right? And that's really how you get Congress's permission. He doesn't have to go to Congress and say, hey, I'm going to wage war here. Sometimes, in fact, that might be a mistake because what he wants to might leak through Congress out to the enemy. Sometimes the commander-in-chief has to make moves without necessarily getting permission from Congress. If Congress don't like it, they can defund it. Now, Doug, do you have any proof? Yeah, absolutely. Our first two international wars were undeclared wars, the two Barbary Wars. Congress didn't declare war there. They did fund them, but President didn't ask permission ahead of time, and he did not get a declaration of war. Barbary Wars were under Jefferson and Madison. You can look it up and see if Madison and Jefferson are waging war without a declaration of war, guess what? I'm pretty sure those two guys understood the Constitution. Therefore, I'm pretty sure that waging war without a declaration of war is not unconstitutional based on their actions. Now, that said, Doug, what if, though the president's out of control, man, he's a warmonger, he's just attacking everybody, this is where Congress does have, if they feel it's necessary, ways to reel that in. Number one, they can defund it. No money, no war. Number two, if they believe that a president is abusing his power of war powers, in other words, he's using it too much, he's using it in situations they shouldn't be, they can also impeach him. So to impeach and to defund are the tools that Congress has in case the president gets out of control. But war can be waged without a declaration, and war can be waged without asking Congress. And when you look at back then, a part of the reason for that, this is not the whole reason, but a part of it was back then, well, they didn't have the telephone, the telegraph, the radio, television, and internet, and all that jazz. And so if war needed to be approved by Congress first, well, that might take a while. The war might be over by the time those guys we get the message out to the guys, where they're at. Then they ride their horse all the way to Washington, D.C. Before you know it, 4, 5, 6 weeks have passed. War's over. You've got to have a central power like a George Washington that can act as the commander-in-chief to direct things. And then if Congress wants to fund it later, when they get together, they can fund it. There should already be some money set aside for emergency defense or emergency war. And then after that, the funding is up to Congress. That's basically the way it was, and the way it should be. Now, that said, personally, if people say, well, then what do you think of Iraq? Was it an illegal war? I don't think it was an illegal war. And in fact, I don't have a problem with the fact that we bombed some military facilities there in Iraq under Hussein. I don't like the idea, though, of trying to change these regimes into democracies, democracy building. I hate that, nation building. I don't think that's our job. They're not capable of what we have because their culture is very different than ours. And when you remove a central piece of power, it creates a vacuum, and sometimes it will be filled by something worse than what you removed. So I'm not a fan of.
Well, I'm going to respectfully.
I'm not a fan of lingering in a war zone. I think we should have gone in there, bombed the hell out of some military then just left.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you about bombing Iraqi military targets. We shouldn't have been there to begin with for any reason whatsoever.
Okay.
We never should have been there. That's all.
I've got an article bookmarked that talks about how it's been now 81 times in the 20th century the United States either militarily intervened or tried to commit a coup or interfered with elections in foreign countries. And that's there's literally nothing in the Constitution that talks about being able to do any of that. So we've been an outlawed nation for a century.
George Washington in his farewell address talked about foreign entanglements.
Yes,
he warned against it.
He also warned against political parties in that speech.
This is true, but he was just reiterating what Adam said, man. And I still take Madison's stance on that, but that's a different discussion. But when it came to foreign entanglements, basically what Washington said was the best way to be prepared for, or best way to achieve peace is to be prepared for war. First of all, peace through strength. Well, Washington was the first one to say it. Number two, we should only be involved in foreign entanglements if it directly influences our interests or our country's protection. Otherwise, none of our business. And a great example, one of the few times John Adams was right during his presidency and Jefferson was actually wrong. People ask me, you ever know if time Jefferson was wrong? Yeah. When he was vice president under Adams, when Britain and France were going to war, and Adams says, because Jefferson's like, hey, man, we need to pick sides. We need to, defend France. We need to go up against, we need to help them out. So no, Adams said, it's none of our business. It doesn't concern us. And Jefferson basically said, well, we need to at least verbalize who we support. And Adams says, no, once again, it's none of our business. And if it does not influence our interests directly, it's none of our business from the founder's point of view. So now we go back to Iraq. And whether or not we should have been there really comes down to your opinion on whether or not it directly influenced the United States. Was there a direct connection? If not, then we had no business being there.
We didn't. But, there's so much money in war. You got the war profiteers. You got, money is war is a racket. And it can't be said often enough. Look at the people around. Who are beating the drums, the war drums right now with Russia? It's the same people.
Mm-hmm.
It's the money.
They stand to make a lot of money.
Of course they do.
Or it's either money or control, or
it's what it's always about. Everything
or diversion.
Money and power. When the diversion even is connected to money and power somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And Martha says that wars have been a money-making scheme for the elite. Yeah, from day one. Absolutely. Before the
I'm eager.
Constitution, that was true.
Let's get to the let's get down there to the armies and the Navy. I want to touch on that.
Okay, very good. So first, let's talk about the letters of marque and reprisal. What that is remember the United States Navy, for example, is very small in the beginning. But if you had a merchant vessel and we needed help, say, hey, here's your letter of marque. You're now working for the Navy. This is your proof that you're a part of the U.S. Navy. That's what a letter of marque and reprisal is. And make rules concerning captures on land and water. Make rules regarding prisoners of war, in other words, that we capture. That's up to Congress. They do not have this right of habeas corpus or civilian courts, all that jazz. In other words, Guantanamo Bay is totally constitutional. Just saying. Okay. Next line. Congress shall have the power to raise and support armies, but no appropriation money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. Once again, founders were afraid of a standing army being used against the people. The people have the power of the purse strings in the House of Representatives. Therefore, if they feel the army is becoming a standing army that can be used against them, they can defund it, because every 2 years, the funding mechanism is in place according to the Constitution, and the House of Representatives has the power of the purse strings, which is the voice of the people originally. Then it says to provide and maintain a Navy. This goes back to what we said before. Army every 2 years, Navy permanently maintained, permanently funded, perpetually. Because the Navy, number one, I hate to say this, sailors, you're just not as dangerous when it comes to a standing army situation. You're out there in the sea. We're not really worried about you attacking the people. But number two, also, not that they were the greatest of shots compared to the Army, but that's beside the point. But also because the Navy was so important with those trade routes, getting back to the Barbary pirates, getting back to all that stuff, when it comes to the ocean. You just now get the bad shot thing? Is that what you...
No.
Yeah, well,
I didn't pay attention. War Hamster asked a question, and I didn't even. I spaced. I thought somebody was just asking the question, and I didn't even realize it was War Hamster. So I answered War Hamster's question. Anyway, it was just funny.
But you got it wrong.
All right. Well, I will say this: when it comes to the military, just to be a little bit on the light side, my tail light in my truck went out, and so I go to the parts store, and the guy says, well, there's two possible lights here. Can you go get the light? Here's a screwdriver. So I pull off the piece, and I can't get the light out for the life of me. I take it to the guy who, by the way, it turns out was a United States Marine. He goes, and when he pulls it out with no problem, after I struggled with it for about 10 minutes, I said, well, there's the difference between the Marines and the Navy. So there you go.
All right. Well, okay. Let's put it into this. Is it Spain?
What was the question? What's the poll?
What's the first? What was the first country the United States invaded?
It's Hawaii.
Okay.
I can accept the counter argument, but technically, first time that we put our troops on foreign soil for the purpose of invasion is considered Hawaii.
Tripoli.
So Libya.
Maybe I asked.
No, not Libya. The Tripoli is a city in Libya. The original Tripoli was just north of what is today Israel.
Okay.
I think
you ever heard the Marine Corps hymn, "The Shores of Tripoli"? Where did we land our Marines in an invasion of the Barbary pirates? On the shores of Tripoli, just north of what is today Israel.
I'm going to check my source for that question, and I'm going to bring it to class on Thursday, and we can hash this out. Because I probably phrased it.
Positive is Hawaii. I'm saying it's Tripoli.
Well, I think the question's phrased improperly. It had to do with where we actually acquired the land or reinvaded for the purpose of keeping it.
Well, that's why I said Canada, because we sent troops into Canada during the War of 1812.
We did.
So that's why I said Canada.
But I say Tripoli because Jefferson landed Tripoli before Canada, I believe.
That's it. So I think it's my fault for phrasing it wrong. But if you say, for which land did we conquer and keep? That's Hawaii.
Okay, maybe that, yeah, but anyway, whatever. So this is an interesting thing, and D-Dog will appreciate this because I know he's going to say that the Marines are part of, or the men's department of the Navy. You know, I get that, but the reason that the Marines are attached to the Navy or a department of the Navy is that they do not fall under the NDAA and have to be reauthorized every 2 years, which is expressly why the Marines are the ones that guard the president. The Marines are the ones that guard the embassies. The Marines don't ever have to be reinstituted because they are essentially naval infantry.
I have a friend of mine who was in the United States Marine Corps, and he didn't realize that was going on. And when he got his first paycheck and it said Department of the Navy on it, he thought there was a mistake. Wait a second, I got in the Marine Corps. What's happening here? But no, very good. I enjoyed the class, man. You know, I'm trying to get all this stuff fixed, and I thought I had it, and then other things happened. I swear, I'm gonna. Yeah, we're gonna have to visit you.
Well, why don't you do this when you come up to your class on Thursday in Beaumont? Bring the computer, and we'll fix it up.
All right.
So
yeah. Well, the thing is, it was working. I had the background, and then it kept freezing. And you kept seeing black, and then finally, and then my mic was working. And suddenly the earphones stopped working. I'm like, what the hell? So I don't know.
Are we gonna? Do we have anything left? And there's a few paragraphs.
Yeah, we'll continue next week. I'll reiterate what we said about the Army and Navy, and then we'll continue down from there.
Okay, very well. So next week will be the last week for Article 1, Section 8. Feels like we've been.
It should be, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like we've been here forever.
Well, Article 1, Section 8 is that way. It's always one of the longest part. Once we start getting the amendments, you'll notice that the speed we'll start going through a lot of amendments at once. But right now, it's a kind of a trudge. But it's all important. We need to talk about all of it. But for those of you who are new, welcome. I hope you learned something. For those of you who are old veterans here on the show, good to see you again. And my name is Douglas V. Gibbs. DouglasVGibbs.com if you want to learn more. And I've got to get out of here, so I can go to San Juan Capistrano, a little over an hour drive from here. So
yep. And you guys, again, you can find every Tuesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Pacific. We're here. Tell your friends. It's if you go to Mr-Constitution.com, it'll take you right to the YouTube channel, and then Warhamster and I, again, we are part of a roundtable we do every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific. We go live, and you can go to glitchinthematrix.tv, and that'll take you right to our Rumble channel. So glitchinthematrix.tv.
I did tell you about bumping into one of your fans at my class, did I not?
Tell. I think you did, but
yeah, I had a new guy in my Constitution class in San Juan Capistrano, and we get to talking, and he had come across me before long ago when I was doing events there in Beaumont, and that's how he knew of me. But he lives in Orange County, and he realized I was on there, and we get to talking. He says, "Hey, man, I tell you what. You know, a really good show that you probably ought to check out. I think you would like it. It's called The Glitch of the Matrix."
Nice.
No kidding. Really? What's the name of the guys? It's like, Ron, okay, friend of mine, Warhamster. But anyway, it cracked me up, man. This new guy in my class is touting your show. I just thought it was hilarious.
Well, that's kind of awesome because it's only like like not even 2 months old. So that's actually flattering. So
you have a handful of fans out there somewhere.
Yes, we do. Well, we appreciate them all, and we, they make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the thing is, let me leave you guys with this. And this
4
is
p.m. 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern. Martha, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern. Glitchinthematrix.tv.
We're trying to get the truth out, and what they're doing on that show is also about the truth. His Untold History channel. What I do, it's all about getting the truth because we have been fed lies for so long.
I have a very interesting video that I uploaded yesterday about Martin Luther King. I highly encourage people to go watch it. It might ruffle a little bit of feathers, but my only dog in the fight is the truth.
Well, and I finally got back to doing videos, and I decided to do a 43-minute video, but nonetheless, did one on citizenship because people keep asking me about that stuff. So DouglasVGibbs.com YouTube.com/DouglasVGibbs.
I don't want to prolong this any longer, but are you familiar with Heinlein?
As in the
Robert
sci-fi
Heinlein?
writer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So he was talking about the difference between citizenship, citizens, and what's the other? What? So
Subjects?
Is
subjects.
that strange? Is that Stranger in a Strange Land? Is that Heinlein?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
him.
I have read him.
Well, I think Starship.
Excellent.
But he talked about Starship Troopers, and to earn citizenship, you have to earn citizenship. You have to do military service, or you have to serve the government in some way. But whether it be like a work brigade or military service or whatever, but that's how you earn citizenship. And until then, you're not a citizen. So
Right. Yeah, and
so,
they got a funky football game too, but that's beside the point. I love the
anyway,
movie. Yeah,
all right.
I'm a Robert Heinlein fan. Isaac Asimov, Larry Niven. I'm a big time sci-fi guy. I love sci-fi and Heinlein or Heinlein, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Larry Niven and Isaac Asimov are my three favorites.
I'd have to go with Herbert, who's my favorite. And not
Herbert
just for
takes
the
too
Dune,
long to explain things.
not just for the Dune series. He's got a lot of other ones. He had
Oh,
one
I know.
called-
He's matter of fact, was it the Heaven Makers or God Makers? God Makers. That one's awesome. Shorter.
Well,
book.
he had one called the Dasadi. I think it was the Dasadi experiment. I have to go look at it. I think I still have that at one of my parents' house. They really did a deep what if about the legal system. And I read that thing as a teenager, and I've been wondering, how to fix our legal system ever since. He actually had some decent ideas. The best one was the losing attorney gets killed, which I thought, kind of raised the stakes a little bit.
Yeah, well, I tried to get into the sci-fi market. I got a rejection letters bigger than the Obamacare bill, and so now I write nonfiction.
One last question: are you familiar with the book Unintended Consequences?
By
God, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was all about. I'll share it with you.
Familiar, but I can't place it.
I'll share it with you when I see you on Thursday, and we'll talk about it then.
All right, folks. See you later next week. I promise I'll have a background. We're gonna
fix it. We're gonna fix it. Exactly.
But you know what? You're not here for how I look, right? You want what's up in here, right? That's
right.
Really why you're here. So
exactly.
I'm not overly concerned.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you guys.
See you tomorrow, Doug.
All right, bye.